All right, we're back, and I've proven beyond reasonable doubt that my Renogy battery monitor is toast. I mentioned in the last video it says 500 amps on the back here, but for some strange reason, startup screen says 350, as you can see right there. And it's not really giving me any kind of useful information in terms of battery capacity, which is what I really need. So I went ahead and ordered a Victron replacement this afternoon, and I figured it might be kind of interesting to see what's inside this one. So we got 4 screws here holding the back panel on. Take these out. Okay, there's a little tab here. So I don't see any immediate signs of damage. All right. Okay, so on this side it's just the screen, but that definitely looks a little bit cooked, the board there, around those 4 or 5 little nodules. That's related to the plug, so maybe the problem wasn't the plug, maybe it's the board. I don't know. I don't know why it would fry like that, but just out of curiosity, I'm gonna plug it back in, see what happens. Oh, look at that screen. That's weird. So I got the Victron on the way, and I was actually feeling a little bit spendy, and I went and bought not only the Victron monitor, but I got the Victron 1230, which is the DCDC charger. I think what I want to do is replace the isolator that I have on mounted on my firewall. I installed that. I did an install on that a few videos back, but I'm curious to see how many amps the battery isolator is pumping into these batteries. So I think what I'm gonna do when my Victron stuff gets here is I'm gonna put the Victron monitor in, start the Jeep up, go for a ride with the isolator charging the batteries, and take a note of the amperage. Then I'll come back and install the DCDC and compare the amperage of the DCDC and see which one is actually putting out more, because the isolator is actually rated, I think, for 140 amps. I don't know what that means exactly, if that means that it's constantly putting out 140 amps. I can imagine that that's the case, but I don't know, I'm curious to see. So I guess I'll stop here, and once the Victron gets here in probably a week or 2, then I'll pick up the camera again, and that'll be the second half of this video.
Meanwhile, in the constellation of Orion, on a planet nearest its hottest star.
So I got the shunt mounted on the battery bank. I got the app on my phone. It's fully updated. Obviously I didn't have the impulse control to do any sort of unboxing on the shunt, but there's literally thousands of unboxings of these things online already. I don't really need another one. I do miss having my giant monitor screen that has all the information in one spot, but I think I'm gonna get used to this pretty quick. The fact that I can just pull this app out of this phone out of my pocket and check my status while I'm up inside my tent, whereas before I would have to climb down the ladder and, you know, open the Jeep up and look at my monitor, which is normally mounted over top of my passenger side wheel well on that little piece of Velcro tape there. So one thing I did notice when I pulled the new shunt out of the box is how enormous it is compared to the old Renogy. It's literally twice the size. These blocks on the new Victron are twice the size. So I know I'm beating a dead horse, but the size difference and the fact that the monitor flashes 350 when you first turn it on, I have my doubts. What I wanted to do was check out the app. Take a second to load. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, so the charger is probably in float mode now, or approaching it, 4.85 amps. A far cry from what the isolator is probably going to put in, but we're going to find out. So I got the battery back in here temporarily, obviously, and I got my ground connected. It bolts to my seat frame here, and now I need to just reconnect the positive, the charge cable, and then flip the switch on the breaker. So I have these posts. This is how I get my power from the isolator up on my firewall back here to the battery bank area. Here we go. Gotta be real careful not to hit metal.
It becomes an exposed electrical outlet.
Oh, these boots are a pain in the butt. So, hit my breaker. Now, the connection between the isolator and the battery bank should be live once I turn the engine on. Huh, yeah, just about the same as the battery charger. So I'm gonna kick my idle up here. So I got, again, 4.5. So the isolator has been giving the battery bank an amperage that is sort of right in line with what it's supposed to get, I guess. So here's where things tend to get a little tricky.
I'd like to have an argument, please.
Certainly, sir. Have you been here before?
No, this is my first time.
I see. Do you want to have the full argument, or were you thinking of taking a course?
Some people say that you're supposed to charge your battery or your battery bank at 10% its capacity. Then other people say 20%, and then there's other people that are saying 30%. And this is not just individuals. I've read information from companies as well. So I have no idea where that leaves me. I know that my keyline battery isolator on my firewall, while it's rated at 140 amps, you just saw on the monitor, that's not what it's putting out when the battery bank is fully topped off. So the next logical question is, what happens when they're low? Is that actually when that 140 amps comes into play? The whole reason that I haven't installed this DC-DC yet is because I've been told, you know, by some people it's too powerful, by other people it's not. But this DC-DC is only capable of 30 amps. That isolator, according to what it says on the outside of it, is capable of 140, if I'm reading that right, if I'm understanding this right. So with that in mind, am I actually safer with the DC-DC that maxes out at 30 as opposed to 140? So this is, I guess, what you would call the bro science speculative section of the video. I've been doing a lot of research on how charging systems work, and I think that I have the theory down. So if this is my alternator, then I have my starter battery, and I have my isolator, and then I have the auxiliary battery or auxiliary bank. What happens is, when you start the Jeep, the alternator sends current to the starter battery. And that battery, I mean, hopefully it's not all the way down, but maybe that battery is just a little bit low. So the alternator sends current to that battery until it reaches its, you know, full max point. I think it's 13 point something volts, I can't remember. And when the starter battery reaches that voltage, the isolator recognizes it and it passes the current into the auxiliary battery. So when I was referring earlier in the video to the isolator pushing current to the auxiliary battery, I kind of had that concept wrong. Isolators don't actually push current. They just open up and let it through when the alternator sends it. I think it's better to think of the isolator as sort of a gatekeeper. Say you have a full starter battery, but you were camping for a couple days and you ran your battery, you ran your AGM all the way down to like 30%, which is a no-no. AGM batteries, their floor is supposed to be 50% if you want them to last, you know, if you want to get your money's worth out of your AGM battery. You don't want to take it down below 50%. The problem is with isolators is that if the auxiliary battery is really low, the isolator is going to send a ton of current so we can get this battery up and running again.
Are you the key master?
Yes, have some.
And the isolator really couldn't care less about what that amount of current is going to do to your battery bank. All it knows is that the alternator is running, the main battery is full, and the battery bank is low. So it's going to stay open and let as much current flow through as is needed until the battery bank is level with the main battery. And AGM batteries are just not designed to take a rapid charge like that. So that's where DCDCs come in. If you have one that's rated for your size battery bank. In that case, you have your alternator, and you have your starter battery, then you have a DCDC, and then you have your auxiliary battery back here. Now, in this situation, if your starter battery is full, alternator sends current to the starter battery, the DCDC recognizes that this battery is full and then starts sending current to your auxiliary battery, which is down near 30% because you're an idiot and you left your fridge on too long. Then the DCDC is going to recognize, it's going to say, hey, the floor for this battery is 50%. So we can't just send a ton of current in this direction. We got to charge this battery up slowly at a rate that is appropriate for a battery of 56 amp hours. The problem is that if you don't choose your DCDC wisely, you more or less run the same risk that you do with the isolator. So in my situation up here with my isolator, or gatekeeper, so to speak, with 160 amp alternator, there's not much standing in the way of me overcharging those batteries when my capacity level is too low. An interesting side note is that if an AGM battery bank only has a 50% capacity that you can deplete, then it's not really 56 amp hours. It's actually 28 amp hours. I'm camping and I'm running my refrigerator, I'm running my lights, battery chargers for phones, and all kinds of accessories on 28 amp hours. And I'm supposed to be keeping an eye on that 50% floor as my battery depletes, because I don't want to go below that 50%. This is sort of the reason that I was so agitated when I realized that my Renogy battery monitor wasn't giving me credible information in terms of where my capacity was. So I'm gonna wrap this up here. I'm gonna put the DCDC on the shelf for a little while until I'm ready for a bigger battery capacity. As it stands, my AGM battery bank is not very old at all, so I got plenty of miles on that. I haven't driven a Jeep in probably 2 months now, and I'm really kind of itching. So I'm gonna put all this back together, slide my battery bank back in, and put the back seat in, and get her on the road again. But if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to my channel. Watch me nerd out and learn some shit firsthand instead of just taking internet forums and chat rooms for gospel.